Jehoiakim, Nehushta, Elnathan. Good job, Rich. Enter this reading today. And then the one that gets you a graduate degree in lecturing, Nebuchadnezzar. But these are important names in the history of Israel because it's really the sad demise of technically the southern kingdom of Judah, Jerusalem itself. The northern kingdom, which is referred to as Israel, north, Judah, south. The northern kingdom had already been conquered by the Assyrians, and they had scattered all the people of the 10 of the 12 tribes everywhere. All that was left was really Judah and a remnant of Benjamin. Those tribes. So they really stood alone, and then they became a vassal of Egypt. They were already starting to wane in their sense of independence, but that was for political expediency, because the new threat was that the Assyrians had been conquered by the Babylonians, and the Babylonians were taking over that whole region. And King Nebuchadnezzar of the Babylonians himself came to the walls of Jerusalem, and they mounted a siege, and the kingdom crumbled. But here's why. In the way it's told in the second book of Kings, it's not because of forces better armies or well supplied to that. No, it's they had failed God. The people of Judah, the chosen people, had failed God. Now they had some good kings, but the last few kings of Judah, the kings of Israel, the northern kingdom, they all had started worshiping false gods and abandoning the God of Israel, or they would pay lip service to him, but then they worshiped all these other gods. Clearly, direct violation of the first commandment. I am the Lord your God, you shall have no false gods before me. Well, some of the kings of Judah were faithful. Hezekiah was a good king, and he came in, and his predecessors had all these shrines to these other false gods. Hezekiah destroyed all those shrines and got the people to listen to the word of God, the law of Moses, the 10 commandments, and they became faithful and focused again under his leadership. But then Hezekiah's son, who succeeded him, went right back to the same worship of false gods and other horrible things like human sacrifice, even sacrificing his own son to these gods. It's disgusting to read that stuff. And then his son did the same horrible stuff. And then Hezekiah's great-grandson, he became faithful to God again, but it was already, the die was cast. And there was some time of fidelity until the end of his reign, and his son went back to he was the last king of Judah. There was one kind of put up as a puppet who tried to rebel against Nebuchadnezzar, but to no avail. Because it was their infidelity. Now, when we look at this as New Testament people, we see that really as an allegory of infidelity to God. We're called to remain faithful. And this parable of Jesus is just so punchy. It's so... you'd hardly have to explain it, it's about hearing the word and acting on it. And that's what King Hezekiah and his great-grandson called the people to. That's what King David did, Yes, they had their foibles and failings, but in essence, they heard the word and they acted on it. They were faithful to God. They recognized God as their only source of life and hope for the future, hope for themselves, hope for eternity. And so we're called to do that too, so that our faith may not just be lip service. Now, everybody's at different stages, it's easy for us to say, well, all those people who aren't going to church, they should go to church. Well, that's not what this is about. It's really looking at our own personal lives. How am I called to be faithful to God? Am I acting consistently? Yeah, even myself, I can say, well, I'm a priest, isn't that good enough? Well, no, it's how you live, whatever your calling is. And we're always called to strive for excellence, to give our lives more perfectly, to continually be perfected in the Lord. St. Ignatius has this great plan for that. It's the examine. To spend each day, he recommends for the Jesuits, his own order, at least twice a day. But to take inventory, Ignatius himself, I think he did this every hour, to take inventory of our day. How did I do? Where did I sin? Where was I faithful to God? What do I need to ask forgiveness for? What do I need to build upon? And then look ahead to the next day, or the next part of the day, or however often one does it, at least at night it's good, and say, how am I called to amend my life, and then give it my best shot tomorrow and start again, you know? I think that's a good plan of life. It's just spending time reflecting, because if we don't do that reflection, then we'll become habit, and habits, good habits are great, of course, but sometimes there are little bad habits that we just are ignoring, and that kind of consciousness and reflection, I mean, I'm speaking to myself too. I do this sometimes. I should do it more consistently. But that kind of reflection, I'm giving myself a pep talk here, do this all the time, every day. That kind of reflection is what leads to greater and greater holiness, greater and greater fidelity, greater and greater doing of the Word of God, not just hearing.